Hi everyone and welcome to Asami Rat Care. So today's video is going to be about free range. So first off, what is free range? So free range is a term we use to describe getting rats out to play effectively. So giving them a place outside of the cage to exercise, stretch their legs, to do different things than they would normally do in the cage. And it's quite important for a number of reasons. It exposes them to different stimuli, different exciting things, it makes their lives more fun, it helps build the bond with you. You'll often see when I'm filming my videos, my girls are out on free range and they often choose to come and visit me, and that's lovely from a lot of senses, and I'll go and play with them quite often as well, though perhaps not when I'm doing the video, well, not so much, but I've got a small queue of rats just climbing up at me at the moment. So when we're talking about free range, what you really need to think about is what's suitable for your rats at a time. So a lot of people will say that you must carry out free range for an hour for every day for all your rats. If you don't do that, then you're not giving them nearly enough. Now there's a bit more to it than that. You need to remember kind of why we free range, and thinking about things like giving them chance for extra exercise. So quite often they're in a cage has quite restricted space, so when we're giving them free range we're giving them chance to kind of stretch their legs and such. So if you have a very big cage, then you have less of a need for kind of lots of running time, or if you have a wheel and let's say they use it, again less of a reason for lots of running time than you would do if you had a much smaller cage where the more free range you can give the better. Though obviously it does need to be in proportion. Rats do need a decent sized cage because they spend most of their time in that. You can't replace that with free range unless they're literally free ranging all the time, which I do know some people that successfully keep rats in a kind of safe free range type setup. So we're thinking about free range. In terms of the amount that I would recommend is, I would say for most owners aiming for at least around about half an hour a day is a good idea. It seems to kind of give them enough time to kind of properly stretch their legs and play without kind of taking up loads of time if you do have a busy life. Now of course the rats will enjoy it, and you'll probably enjoy it too if you can give them much longer than that. I quite enjoy when I can spend a bit of time out here with them, but it's not always doable, but that gives you a bit of a feel. I will say if you have to miss the odd night, it's not the end of the world. The rats will forgive you. They're probably a bit bored. Most rats, particularly once they're kind of used to what they can get out of it, look forward to free range. And if you can make it exciting for them, all the better. But it's sometimes life happens and you can't free range them that night, but as long as you're generally having a good bit of time with them, and by free range I'm not just talking about let's give them the entire room type free range like I do a lot of the times here, but I'm also talking about let's sit on the sofa with them for a bit, let's let them play on a smaller area, let's put them in the pet playpen, etc. All of them count as versions of free range, and they're all kind of time out of the cage that's different. So we've talked about kind of thinking about how frequently and how long. I will say there's several things that's well worth doing when you are free ranging. So as part of my normal free range, I will always health check my rats. It's a very simple thing to do, but very effective. It reminds me to do it. It makes sure that the rats are all healthy and fine. And it's actually kind of part of the bonding in some ways as well, isn't it, Chops? And it's just part of the routine for me, and it's a good time for me to health check them, because as well as kind of physically getting my hands on them and feeling for lumps, bumps and stuff, I can also watch them running around, and that's often where you pick up kind of symptoms when they're looking a bit tense or not running evenly and so on. So when you're thinking about free range, different types of free range are useful in different ways, and I would definitely not go in with your first rats, new rats, immediately release them into your living room, because that is probably a recipe for disaster. You need to do things appropriately. So you need to understand a kind of rat's mentality in this. A large space for a rat can be very, very scary, particularly when it doesn't already smell of rats, and that's quite key. In the wild, rats will use scent trails laid down by other rats or even themselves to navigate around an area, and that will tell them the safe spaces. They will typically hug along the wall because that is safer for them. Now we do breed and kind of raise our pet rats to behave in different ways to wild rats, but the instincts are still there. So if you place them in an entirely new room that doesn't smell of rats and it's a large space, they're likely to stick to the corners, hide under things and be quite jumpy as they kind of get used to it. Whereas usually when I release even quite kind of new rats to my rat room, because there has been enough rats around here, a certain amount of scent has been laid down, so it becomes fairly safe for them. It still takes the kittens maybe a few weeks to really get used to it and enjoy it in the same way that the adults do, but it's definitely a step ahead of when I first moved into this room and everybody was terrified for quite a while. So what should you do with new rats? Now what I always try and make a point of doing, and it works well, is to try and free range in a much more limited area with new rats, or rats that I haven't yet built that kind of really strong bond of trust with. So we have quite a good example of this. I will just move this along a bit. You know when you have too much stuff and you're not very organised. So this is my current awkward group free range. So these are the group of rats that have been assembled from kind of various somewhat shy rats, as you can see from little Tricks jumping there. There's also Burko has a free range over there, but he's going exploring somewhere else at the moment. He'll probably appear later on. Don't ask me what Tato's doing. I think she's trying to get to some food. Somebody's in a feeding cage up there as well. But the key thing about this is it's a small space. I've basically given them this work surface. They can fall off this, but I do try and keep an eye and make sure that they don't. But it's small, so if I do need to catch them, they can't run away and get underneath anything, get themselves in a state, etc. They can just have a good understanding. But what I've tried to do is fill it with lots of different textures, different things to do. So we've got a snuffle mat here, which is a mat where you sprinkle food in it and they dig around and forage in it. We have a digging box in here with all sorts of interesting bits and pieces, card and hay, bits of wood, for some reason. A teddy rat, different textures so they can climb up. They also go up on the cage. I free ranging them separately on this area because they don't get on with my main group, or they've not been introduced to my main group. If you keep moving, my main group are trying to visit them at the moment because they're interested. But yes, so this is a nice safe space for them to free range. It's not too big, so it won't freak them out too much. I'll be entirely honest. Oh, have you found a cork there? Trix has found a cork, she's very happy. But yeah, I'll be entirely honest, if, let's say, Trix or even Burko at this moment in time got on the floor, I would struggle to get them back. I'd get them back, the rat room is safe, but it would also be quite stressful for them, the process of me getting them back. Coming out, mister. Come on, coward. Burko's thinking about it. I will show you his... They're currently still in a small cage because it's only soon after intros, so I'm just giving them another few days in there before they get into a proper cage. But it's going well so far. But yes, so you can free range in a small area. This is a good example. Again, trying to give them different textures, different things to do. They can't stretch their legs in the same way that they can on the main rat room floor, but it's also safe for them, and that's quite key. We have a Burko out. And actually this helps build their confidence up as well as they get used to being around lots of different things. You notice on here there's not too much open space. Wide open space is scary, so this is a really good way to do it. And what I quite often do on this space when I'm not kind of filming a video or there's not a cage on it, I will actually sit up there with them and then I become part of their free range area, and it's really quite good to kind of interact with them and they climb up me and so on. Or if I'm not sat on it, I will quite often like lean down and just go at their eye level because it's less scary when we're at eye level, isn't it, Burko? You can see he's coming on quite well if you've watched him in the socialisation videos, though he's still a little bit nervous, aren't you, bless you, a bit hand shy. But yes, so this is my kind of small space free range, and I use this for babies. I use this during intros like this or with nervous rats for quite a while until I'm confident that I could retrieve them on the main floor. Right, so there we go. Let's do a quick move around again. Right, so the other kind of free range that you can do, which is quite nice, is to actually just do a bit of cuddle time with a rat. And this is kind of a situation where you will find somewhere you can sit that's comfy and small, so smaller than the surface on there. I'll take my rats into the house and we'll sit on a seat or a sofa, and we'll just sit there. There'll just be us. Not a lot else to do, but it's all about just becoming comfortable with each other and spending time kind of cuddling, stroking. They can get to know me closely, I can get to know them closely. And I wouldn't say that is something you want to do all the time, but it's quite a nice thing to do, and it's quite a good way to build a bond with your rats. So I'll do it more often when I've got kittens, and I'll maybe do it once a week for a few weeks, until we've kind of got that like extra level of trust and interest, and it can be quite nice. They'll kind of lick me and I'll groom them, and it's just a pleasant thing to do. So that's quite a good version of free range to do as well. But again, mix it up, don't just rely on that, because otherwise your rats will not get a lot out of free range beyond like kisses and licks. And they won't get the extra stimulus, they won't get the excitement, the fun and games. So the next form of free range, which is what's going on at the moment in the rat room, and actually I might take you up here and show you around a little bit. I'll have to watch out because the girls do quite like to climb up my legs during free range. It's a mistake that I made in that they climb up my legs, so I gave them a treat, and now they expect a treat every time they climb up my legs. Right, so this is my free range area, which is also my rat room. So you can see here, let's have a look at the cat tree. We have a bit of a cat tree here. Now cat trees are great. This is kind of like a proper big free range area for me. But cat trees are great to be converted to rats. You can see it doesn't really look like a cat tree. What I did, I wanted to give them plenty of climbing opportunities, but I also wanted to give them different textures and stuff to be interested in. So in this cat tree, they have a ball pool. It was kind of like a box, and I just added this mesh on the front, and they can get in from the back side. They've got things to climb up, various different ropes and chains. They've even got a hanging ladder, which is quite fun, and a feather boa that I wore for a fancy dress once, which they actually quite like climbing up sometimes. They've got like a little holy thing. I should mention about this surface, I just got some PVC fabric, which I covered it. It was like a furry cat tree texture before, which doesn't really work with rats and marking everything and so on. It goes up, and they've got a little hidey house at the top. So that's quite a good thing that I do on free range. Sorry, the awkward group are pushing things around a bit, but that's quite fun. So again, lots of different textures. I should mention just in here we have what I call interesting things box. Again, let them explore lots of textures. I've also created height to their free range area by using the cage and using various perches on the outside to give them places to climb up. I do that because they're going to climb up the cage anyway, so at least by doing that, then I can make sure that they can get back down. Otherwise I was having to rescue them quite regularly, or run interference and try and stop them getting up there, but when rats are determined, it's difficult. And I should actually mention, one of the key things on your free range, thinking about it, is rat proofing. So this room is pretty good. There isn't a lot of stuff in here, but there are a few gaps. So first, if you see on the bottom of the door there, this had quite a large gap underneath it, and I've got a draft excluder, and that basically keeps the rats from escaping. We also have a wardrobe here, where I keep all the food. The bit of mesh you see at the bottom there, that stops them breaking into the wardrobe and eating all the food before they should, which they did several times before I came up with that. Yeah, I'm getting molested a little bit at the moment. I also have a couple of bits of a fridge and such. This is technically our utility room, even though it's actually my rat room. Washing machine, etc. I've got mesh under them to stop the rats getting underneath there. My adults have never really been an issue, but very young babies could get down there, and I did have an incident once. The baby was retrieved, but it took me about 20 minutes of tempting him out with food and mum before I could do that. We have some climbing action going on here on the wobbly bridge. But yes, so what we're trying to offer with free range is lots of different things than they would normally get in their cage, and also the chance to stretch their legs. This is great because the whole room is quite a large room. It's a converted garage, and that gives them a chance to run up and down, and when they're really going, they really do go at it. In fact, I might do a bit of a time lapse afterwards and see whether we can set you up somewhere you can see what goes on. Sorry, I just keep getting bothered by the rats. Bothered is probably not the right word for it, they are cute. But yes, so it's all about different heights, different textures, different things. It can be as simple as what we've got under here. It's just a cardboard box with a few holes in it, and I've stuffed it full of paper, and they go in there and shuffle around and dig and so on. And much like I do in the little free range area, this is all about fun and games, and I will quite often play with them as well, and might do a separate video on the kind of games you can play with your rats. But I don't want to keep this going for too long and bore everybody. But yes, so that's what to think about. Think about rat proofing. Think about cables. Cables are a rat's, I won't say the nemesis, they like them a little bit too much. But if you look over here, my heater cable, so this is my rat room heater, I've got a cable protector on it. Now, that's a fairly simple bog standard IKEA job. It wasn't expensive, but it's probably not going to be up to a rat that's determined. My rats aren't real cable chewers, but some are, and you have to be very careful with those. Make sure you protect those cables. Make sure that there's nowhere they can get behind that you can't get them out. My closest is the cage, and to be honest, I'll wait them out if they decide to get behind the cage, or just feed them and they'll go back in. That is another thing to consider, when to free range. Ideally, you want to do it just before they're going to get fed in the evening, let's say, or whenever you feed them, because that maximises their energy levels, and it will mean they get most out of it in terms of running, jumping, playing, etc. So that's a good time to do things, and it's also very easy to get them back in the cage if you've got a setup like mine where the cage is in the free range area, because you just scatter some food in there. If you have to take them out separately, you can scatter a bit of food in the carrier, and they'll usually mostly jump back in as you take them out. So that is a kind of top tip from me. Alright, so I don't think there's a lot else to say about free range beyond have fun. If you're going to do what I'd call a permanent free range setup, you really have to think about rat safety, particularly heights and such. If you're going to let them out for extended period of times without you there, that's another thing to think about. If you've not got a rat safe area, think about bathrooms are usually pretty good. Just check behind the toilet for holes and the sinks, because they can cause problems. Or hallways, they usually have very little in the way of kind of problems, whereas lounges and bedrooms tend to be a nightmare. Kitchens can be okay in some cases, or conservatories, they can sometimes be okay too. Playpens can help. There's some really clever playpens out there that used plastic clip together shoe storage. Just make sure you get it high, and I would say you want something that's at least 4 foot high, if not perhaps taller, because rats can jump very, very well when they want to. Fabric playpens, you can get folded up puppy playpens. I've used them before. Rats can chew their way out of them, but if you're in there with them and you supervise, you're probably going to be okay, but they're not a long-term solution. Or you can make your own from corrugated plastic. Mog is staring deeply into my eyes and trying to eat my mouth. But yeah, bits of plywood or bits of corrugated plastic can be stuck together to create nice playpens, or even just block off access to certain areas. It's definitely one to think about. And basically enjoy free range. It's a time for you and your rats to have fun and get to know each other. You can even film videos in them if you want to. And hopefully the rats will entertain people so they don't have to look at you too much. But yes, so have fun with your free range. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you find you get the most from free range. It's always exciting to hear other people's points of view. And I will see if I can set up a video so you can see the girls getting around things. It might be rubbish, so I might just end this, but we shall see whether time lapse works or not. Bye for now.